for everybody who doesn't know, VK, why don't you just give a little context on your role and kind of as a CEO of your own company here? Because I think this is going to frame the conversation well.
Yeah, for sure. JB, thanks a lot for having me. For those who don't know me, my name is Vrahram Kadkhodaian. I've been a career seller my whole life. I lead a company called Prolifiq. We do sales enablement for the Salesforce customers. So everything from key account management to digital content. We unlock the investments people are making inside of Salesforce. And if you're a customer, we love having you. If you're not, we'd love to have you. Thanks for having me, John.
Yeah, and I think the reason that we're having this conversation, like I'm the CEO of my own little company. I'm only 10 people, professional services, but I sell to the C-suite quite a bit. VK, you are in the C-suite. You sell to the C-suite too. So we're going to try to come at it from a couple of different angles here. One from us, like literally selling and talking to executives on a consistent basis, but also being executives. Now, we're not, huge enterprise CEOs and that type of thing. We'll touch on that. We both sold to them. But this is really going to be trying to figure out different tools, techniques, and tips on how to really just engage and move the dial. Because almost every deal these days is getting up to the highest level for scrutiny. And it's much different than it was about a year ago. So
yeah, and to your point, a year ago we were selling very differently. You know what I mean? And now the challenges that organizations face are the same, but the way you sell and the way people recept to those opportunities is very different. So we've got to take that baseline and that core of what we've been so good at doing for so many years and evolve that in this new age of selling, right?
Yeah, exactly. Perfect. So just a couple of things here. I do want to chime in and thank our sponsors. Our sponsors are the ones who allow us to do this type of stuff for free specifically and try to get as much content out there as we possibly can. So all of these, just to give you all some perspective here, when we, JB, we had actually never took sponsorships up until this past year. And when we decided to, I told Chris, who's our chief growth officer, that regardless of who it is, that the first thing is they got to have a good ethos. They got to have good values, right? And they have to align with how we sell and how we believe sales should be done. Our why here at J Barrows is sales done right. And we believe that if sales is done right, it's the greatest profession in the world. When done wrong, it's the worst. And these companies are really aligned with that. So check them out. A lot of them have free tools. You're going to get emails from them. They're going to give free offers, stuff like that. Just take a look at them, see what's going on, all right? And as always, yes, you are going to get a recording of this. As long as you registered for it, you're going to get a recording of it. And if you have questions, go in the Q&A box. So at the bottom, if you look, there'll be a Q&A thing right there. Chat, we're going to pay attention to chat. That's where you all can kind of interact with each other. But if you have specific questions for VK and I, go into the Q&A, and James is going to be answering some of the ones, or he's going to pop in and say, hey guys, really good question here from so-and-so. Can we dive into that? All right. So is my audio all right? I'm looking at a couple of audios. VK, can you hear me?
Yeah, it's awesome.
All right, cool. I just want to make sure that my audio is all right.
Your audio is always awesome.
Yeah, well, anybody, and by the way, speaking of that, if anybody wants this setup, I got a Google Doc that actually outlines exactly the gear that you want. It's like $500. I brought this to Aruba with me, so anybody wants to have this, it's let me know and I'll throw it in the chat. All right, ready to get rocking? All right, let's get right into it, man. The channels, okay? I think one of the things that we talked about is reaching executives is getting harder and harder and harder right now, because it's almost like, they all jumped on LinkedIn when it was really getting hot or whatever. And I'm actually seeing executives now get off of LinkedIn because it's one of those things where it's turned into this spam engine basically, where everybody's hitting them up just because they fit a profile of them. And so they're starting to kind of retract a little bit, even though they're getting out there from a brand standpoint and those type of things. Connecting with them and gaining access to them is getting harder. So what are you seeing? Let's talk about you just for instance, just in general, VK. Like, where do you spend your time and how do you like to be communicated with? And then let's dive through some of these.
Yeah, for sure. It's an awesome question. I think what we've learned in 2020, right, is the simplification of everything. I know in my own world, John, you and I have talked about this before, like, we've simplified our personal lives so much, where it's been so nice to actually enjoy the little things versus the complexities of missing a flight, waiting at the airport, running to the hotel, a delay, a cancellation, all those complexities. the silver lining is that it's been simplified, right? For us in a lot of ways, working remote, having our teams work remote. So when I think about reaching decision makers, I think, one of the best ways to get a hold of me is through a personal contact, a peer introduction, using your network to actually open up the door, because I get a lot of emails, I get a lot of LinkedIn messages, I get a lot of requests for my time. And I spend my time with the ones that are most sincere and the most genuine, that actually bring me something, that teach me something, that give me something to react to, that's a lot more simplified than hitting me on every single medium of communication that's available to me without a relevant message. If you can find a way to teach me about something, connect with me through somebody that I trust or somebody that I know or someone that's connected to me, whether it's in this life or a previous life, the odds of connecting with me are much, much higher than if you were just to blast me on every single channel without any personalization or making it for me.
So let's talk about the faux pas of that, right? So let's talk about LinkedIn, right? Because what I can't stand, and please, if you're doing this out there, please don't do this, is, hey, VK, I see that, I'm connected to Bill and you're connected to Bill, so let's talk. But I don't go to Bill and get that referral to you, right? I just kind of use the lazy approach that you and me are both connected to the same person. Does that ever resonate with you?
It doesn't resonate with me. It happens all the time, right? Yep. But to your point, I don't understand why you wouldn't have Bill reach out to me and say, hey, John's an awesome guy that adds a lot of value. He can teach you a thing or two. He can give you some perspective on what you guys are doing really well and areas for improvement. I totally encourage you to take 15 minutes to talk to him. That's a big difference versus you saying that you and I are connected to the same Bill.
Yeah. And also, it's like, if you want that, you got to give them a reason. So it's almost like I tell people, it's like when you want a testimonial, right? Like, if I asked you, hey, VK, you give me a testimonial, I'm going to wait probably 2 months to get a testimonial from you. But if I write the testimonial and say, hey, would this be cool for me to add your name to? And you say yes, I'll get it tomorrow. It's the same thing with an introduction. Right? Go find a reason why you want to talk to that CEO, okay? Then go find somebody you're connected to and send the email to them and say, hey, John, I see you're one connected to VK. I've been following him for a while now, and I noticed they're doing some really cool things over at Prolifiq. And I was wondering, this is why I wanted to talk to him. Could you make that introduction?
Absolutely.
Your chances go up exponentially for me to make that connection, right? Because now if all I have to do is forward it over to you and be like, hey, VK, I don't know who this kid is, but at least he did a little bit of effort here. It looks like he has a legitimate reason. You feel, any interest in talking to him? It goes up light years ahead of just, hey, John, could you make a connection for me?
Well, just think about that with video too, right? So if I recorded a video, and let's just say that I was trying to get to James, right? And you were the common connection between James and I. If I recorded a very heartfelt, personal video kind of message, sent it to you and said, John, this is a 15-second, 20-second video for James. Do you mind forwarding this along to him, letting him know that I'd love to connect? That goes a very, very long way.
Love it. Yeah, I think video is underutilized right now as a form of genuine, sincere connections with people and having reasons. I mean, in this virtual world, the video is kind of a little bit of an equalizer, because everybody's trying to figure out, is this email from a bot? Am I on some piece of shit template cadence? You know what I mean? Is there even a human behind what this is? But if you put a video on it, now there's a human. Now for everybody out there listening right now, please, and I'm going to beg you again, don't do this. Don't do the typical whiteboard piece of shit video that says, hi, VK, and then when he opens it up, go, hey, you, thanks for opening up, and being a generic. Everybody knows what a generic email is. Everybody knows what a generic video is. The point of video is to be authentic and to be real and to be empathetic. So if you're going to use video, use it that way, and you will get a much higher response. I know it takes longer and you can't send out your 50 emails with it, but it's going to make a much, much different conversion ratio for you.
Amen. And you know what? I love the word empathetic. You and I have talked about empathy many, many times and being genuine. I think genuine is in everything that you do. All right. So part of what I mean by that is you and you're in, I'm assuming it's the hotel or the house that you're in right now in Aruba.
Airbnb, yep. House,
Airbnb. Yep. You don't have some manufactured background showing where you're at. I'm in my home office, right? This is literally my home office. Okay, I've got my speakers up there. I got some awards that I love. I got my books. I got my whiteboard. This is my office. I'm not trying to find the most beautiful part of my house to have a conversation with you in, right? That's my genuine, that's what I'm throwing out there in the world. People gravitate towards that because people are still people, right? They don't need to have this mahogany background or this beautiful like pool or this oceanfront view when they're talking to you. Build trust right out of the gates, even from that video. If it's just in your office, like you don't have to try to be someone you're not. That established trust is such a big deal right out of the gates.
Yeah. I mean, it's almost like the less produced, the better. You know what I mean? Like I want the ghetto, like, hey, what's up, man? Like from my iPhone almost. And a couple of people asked in the chat, like video. So a couple of different tools here. Vidyard, which is one of our sponsors. You don't have to buy their stuff. They got a free download. So it's VIDYARD, where you can download that and record a video for email. But one of my favorites is the LinkedIn video. That's still getting fire for us. So for those of you who don't know, and most people do who pay attention or follow us, but all you got to do is be one connected. So you got to be one connected to them. You don't even have to pay for this. It's on the app. You can't do this on your phone. I'm sorry, you can't do this on your laptop. You can do it on your phone though. So if I'm trying to message VK and him and I are one connected, if I hit message, I can type, but then there's a microphone. If you push the microphone, a big microphone, and I can leave a voicemail, goes through InMail. And if it doesn't, I can hit, there's a plus sign that drops down where a video icon comes up. The video pops, you reverse that screen, and I do a video. And if you can, try to make it contextual on LinkedIn. So what I usually like to do with LinkedIn is I mention something that I saw on your profile or something that you posted, and I'll usually comment, like, or share something that you did, right? So if I'm going after VK right now, I'm going to look at, see how active he is, whatever. I'm going to comment or share, and then I'm going to go connect with him. Usually I'm going to actually, I used to say personalize your connection, but we're getting a higher response rate when people don't personalize, oddly enough. And then after that, I might go make a phone call, send an email, but then come back on LinkedIn and then write, hey, VK, man, I've been following you for a while now, man. And one of the things I was really impressed with that post you talked about, whatever. And I want to chat with you because our solution really aligns with that. Thought it'd be worth a conversation, man. If you could hit me back here, I'd appreciate it. And then one more step, I'm going to call you 3 days later and leave a voicemail to let you know I left that video. Because voicemails right now, people don't like respond to voicemails, right? I mean, we have phone on there. I do think phone is still a great way of communicating, but very few people respond to voicemails. We're using voicemails now to direct people back to something that we did. So I'll say in 3 days, and I won't even leave my number. I'll say, hey, VK, I sent you a LinkedIn video on Tuesday at 3:00. And this is what it's about. If you could do me a favor and go check that out and get back to me, I'd appreciate it. This is John Barrows with JB Sales. Click. And so there's like that curiosity factor where it's like, what's that? You go look, open it up. Because how many times, out of curiosity, VK, how many times do you check your LinkedIn emails on a weekly basis?
It's a good question. Depends on the week, right? Yeah. But if I were to be completely cognizant of it, I'd say maybe 2 times max.
Yep. And how many times do you check your voicemail?
Probably once a day.
Okay. So think about and those are probably good benchmarks for everybody else out there. Most executives probably check their emails maybe once or twice a week. And maybe once a day, more like twice, 2 or 3 times a week. So if they're only doing it, now they're in their emails all day, every day, right? But that's so much noise. So if you think about where they are and how they interact, you got to make sure you're pointing them in different directions based on where you're going. Because if you think one thing is going to crack through all that noise, you're out of your mind, right?
You know what? You bring up something really interesting, John. You didn't ask me this, but guess how many referrals from friends, former colleagues, partners that I answer to?
How many?
Every single one of them.
Yeah.
So every single time someone I know has referred someone to me, out of the respect and courtesy for that person, I have taken that conversation. And you know what? We talk about phone a little bit. One thing that I will point out about the phone is that almost all of us are on videos all day long in this new reality. Mm-hmm. It's actually refreshing to have a phone call without a video, right? So, the typical 30-minute, 45-minute, 1-hour meeting, break it down and say, hey, I want to have a 10-minute call with you. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to call you at this number at this time. The biggest hurdle with that is people don't call when they say that they're going to call. They either call 10 minutes later, they forget, and they ask for forgiveness and try to reschedule something. But don't underestimate how awesome the phone call can be in these times where we're on video from the minute we wake up to the minute we shut down, right? It's becoming a trend that's coming back.
It is. And there's also a generational component to this too, just for everybody listening. Look, I'm 45, I'm Gen Xer. I forget, you're around the same age, right? Okay.
Yeah.
Right? We grew up with the phone. We grew up with the phone like this. Like, that's how we grew up. We didn't grow up with the phone like this. So and guess what? Gen Xers right now and above, we're the quote unquote decision makers for the most part. So, generationally, you have to think about how that different people like communicating in different ways. So pay attention. The one thing I do have a question for you on this is cell phones. How do you deal with, as a CEO, you get an unsolicited call on your cell phone and it doesn't show up as a number in your phone? Do you answer it? And B, if it's a sales pitch, how do you react?
It's a good question. I actually got one yesterday where the guy was so respectful of my time, where he pointed out that it's unsolicited. He really doesn't know why I'm calling. This is what he does, and all he needs is 2 minutes of my time.
There you go.
Okay? And it was the perfect time. If you think about the psychology, people are taking calls every 15 minutes, 30 minutes, or every hour. So if you're calling me at the top of the hour or at the 30-minute mark, I've probably got other shit I got to do. So try to catch me in between somewhere, right? And when you do get a hold of me or somebody else, be mindful about their time. Be very pointed and direct. Don't try to BS your way through the conversation. Specifically speak about why you're calling, specifically ask for time, and specifically ask for a follow-up call at a better time.
Yep.
That's what you want to do in that time frame when you get a hold of somebody, okay? Because they might be interested, but your entire intro is going to make or break what happens after I pick up the phone.
Absolutely. Literally, how you say hello makes a difference, right? I mean, I usually flow. There's somebody made a comment about pattern interrupt, right? I agree with that. Like, what you don't want to do is, hey, VK, this is John Barrows of JB Sales. How you doing today? It's like, shut up. What do you get off the phone with me? But I'll do that. Hey, VK, thanks for taking my call, man. You got a minute? And I usually go, well, not really, but who is this? What do you want? Well, this is John with JB Sales. And real quick, I know I caught you on your cell phone. The reason I'm calling is give them a solid reason. And I was just wondering what's the best way to get like 10 to 15 minutes on your calendar so we could have that conversation.
Exactly.
You could say, I'm getting out, like, you could tell me tomorrow at 3:00, right? And I'll send you a meeting invitation. It'll be there. Now, does it guarantee you're going to be there? No, but it gives me a much higher chance. Or you could say, well, you caught me now. What do you want to talk about? Right? And then somebody put in there like Sandler upfront contract. You can play around with the Sandler upfront contract, but that's where I put it. So I'll go, hey, VK, thanks for taking my call. Do you got a couple of minutes? Not really. Who is this? What do you want? John with JB Sales. And the reason for my call today is this. And I was just wondering, what's the best way to get a few minutes on your calendar to have that conversation? You then say, I got time now. What do you want to talk about? I say, look, I know you weren't expecting my call, so I'll be brief. I got like 4 questions here for you. After that, I'll share with you a little bit of what our solution I think can add value. And from there, you can tell me whether it makes sense to take the next step or not. Is that okay? Yes. Good. Question. Value proposition closed. Good. Done. 5 minutes. Out.
It's beautiful. That's beautiful, John. And I love that approach. Our team works with you, obviously. We're a customer of yours and a partner of yours. And just using that approach, I think getting the person on the call, the goal is to set the next call. It's not to pitch your product or service. It's how do I find a reasonable time that aligns what I do with your interests. And if you don't have interest, it's not the world ending situation. Nope. We're going to part ways as friends. It's just not going to work. But I am trying to get another time scheduled with you. That is the whole purpose of me reaching out to you unannounced, hoping that we can find time to speak.
And I hope everybody paid attention to what VK just said there. You are not, when you are prospecting to a CEO or anybody, you are not selling your products or services. You are selling time. You are selling the next step. So if you come at me with some pitch, and somebody asked me about like LinkedIn on the chat too, is like LinkedIn, it's like, hey, what do you think about like the connect and pitch versus connect, nurture, add value, right? The fastest way to get unconnected from me is to send me a LinkedIn invitation for me to accept, and then for you to immediately hit me with this paragraph long pitch about how your products and services are awesome. That's the fastest way for me to go, okay, never mind, see you later, block, I'll never talk to that person again.
Yeah.
All right.
I agree.
All right, let's keep mowing through this because we got a few more slides here. Let's see, managing. Let's see.
So I had a good question.
Oh, yeah.
I want to jump in and ask. Somebody said in the chat that they haven't started using video for the larger enterprises, and then in the Q&A, I had a related question, which was, how do you judge genuine video? How do you call a video genuine?
All right. I like that. So, well, the first one, if you haven't started doing it with enterprise, just get used to it. Okay. I mean, who cares? Practice. You know what you can do here is I tier out my accounts. I got my tier 1s, tier 2s, and tier 3s, my great, average, and crap. If you're ever trying something new, run a list of your tier 3s. I used to throw away my tier 3s because I'm like, crap, you're bad customers anyways. But now I use them for practice. So anytime I'm trying something new, like a video that I'm uncomfortable with or whatever, I run a list of my tier 3s. I start putting some stuff together, and I just start getting used to it so I can build up my confidence to go up top. All right. So that's one on that side. But on the other one, what was that? I lost the train of thought. What was the other one?
Yeah, it was, how do you define a video as being genuine?
All right, VK, what's your thoughts on that one?
Well, for starters, I think if you're doing this out there, stop immediately, right? Don't send the same email to multiple stakeholders, and don't record the same video to multiple stakeholders, right? Try to personalize it. Try to speak to what that person's interested in. Use social. Try to understand as much as you possibly can about the person you're sending it to. One of my biggest pet peeves is when I have 4 business unit leaders or 5 business unit leaders that all send me the video of a product that's hot to trot and we all want to buy it, but the same video that they're all sending me independent is the exact same video that they all received. Mm-hmm. So then I question myself with a product, which I think is absolutely fantastic, by the way, just, at a high level. I know nothing about the person or the business. I know the product is awesome. But the fact that you didn't personalize it for my head of CS, or you didn't personalize it for my head of sales, or you didn't personalize it for my head of marketing, then I start questioning whether or not you can really help my business and whether you know what the real challenges are, what the real mandates are, what the real tasks are, or are you just trying to sling product?
Yep.
So being genuine starts with the way you message. Even though you're trying to hit a lot of people, take that extra time to do a little bit of research and personalize your video for the intended target you're sending that video to, and not normalize it across the board.
I couldn't agree. And it bleeds really well into this slide that we have here, is just speak normal language. I mean, I can't tell you how many C-level executives that I talk to that when I ask them, hey, what advice do you give to reps who are reaching out, and that type of stuff? And they're like, just stop it. Just stop with the pretending like you're smart and you're using big words and, all that crap. And just be a normal human being. Just talk to me in normal language. Throw all the marketing lingo shit out the window, right? Transparency and synergy and all that crap. Like, nobody normally talks like that. Right. So just be real. I mean, I think it's hard to, authenticity it's weird because the fact that authenticity is a competitive advantage right now blows my mind, but it is. And authenticity, like you've heard me and Morgan talk about this a lot, the give a shit factor, right? Give a shit. Spend a few minutes on somebody's website, on their LinkedIn, and make some type of logical connection. And all it has to be, and by the way, this does not have to be a book, and I actually do not recommend writing out a script for this type of stuff. I think if you screw up on voicemails and if you screw up on video, that's actually better. So what I want to do is, hey, VK, man, I've been following you a while. And look, the fact that you guys are doing some crazy stuff over at Prolifiq and growing like you are in such an economy right now, I'm kind of curious how you're going up against companies like Salesforce and some of the incumbents there and what the difference is. Because we work with a lot of businesses that are really trying to be strategic and go up against some behemoths, and we give them the tools to be successful. And I was wondering if I could just have a conversation with you about that, man. Could you call me back? And I just made that up on the fly, but like that versus Hi, VK. We are the leading provider of sales training and consulting for Fortune 500 companies, and we guarantee you the results that at every stage of the sales process to make sure that you increase your conversion ratios and close more business. I could love to talk to you and have 15 minutes of your I mean, that I'll fucking throw up all day long.
What window do I jump out of? What window can I open and jump right out of? Okay.
Like that one, James?
Honestly.
I'm dying in my chair.
You're absolutely right, John. I mean, at the end of the day, we're people, right? Like we're not robots. Yeah. Talk like you're a human being, because these executives at the end of the day, they have a drink just like you do. They wake up in the morning and they think about what they've got to attack. They think about all the challenges that they've got going on in their life. The last thing that they want to be is a litmus test to someone that's trying out some sort of robot talk. You know, like, speak to people like they're people. It will go way further than if you talk about all those buzzwords that nobody really understands anyways.
Exactly. And, you know, people ask, you know, UK video doesn't, and, you know, it does depend on the persona in the region. I will say in EMEA, I get a lot of well, that doesn't work here. But then I ask them, have you tried it more than once or twice? And the answer is no. So I will say we've seen great success in EMEA with certain personas. Now, IT and security, that's a little bit of a different persona that probably isn't going to work all that well. But the LinkedIn version does. The Vidyard version, because that, you know, what CISO is going to click on a link to, you know, oh, what's behind this thumbnail? Like, let me click on that. They're not going to do that. But because LinkedIn has the pre-scrubbed spam filter on it, the video comes through, they're more apt to. But then you have to look back and say, is that executive active on LinkedIn? Are they posting? Do they have 500 plus connections? Then it might help. Okay. All right. Talk about messaging strategies, busy decision makers. We already talked about normal language. That one's the statistics one. Have you heard this stat recently on this one?
Yeah, I love it. It was by Gong, right?
Yep. So Gong, and by the way, if you aren't following the Gong blog, please follow the Gong blog. It's one of the best blogs on the planet. It's data-driven insights on what to do, and it compares what the best reps do versus what average reps do. And I actually asked him for that statistic because I used to be the biggest stats guy ever. I used to say the easiest way to come up with messaging is to look at the bottom of your case study. What was the result? Use that as your message. So, hey, VK, the reason for my call today is we just showed XYZ company in your space how to drive these type of results. And I thought, you know, and you fit a similar profile. Yeah. But they don't work as well anymore. Gong put the stat in there. And James, if you could find that blog about Gong and using stats.
It's called The 7 Laws of Highly Effective Sales Emails.
Yeah.
It's an awesome one. So I know someone just requested the link to it. If you just look for it, it's an awesome one. And I think the reason why, I mean, look, guys, at the end of the day, using stats to sell is absolutely powerful. Okay. Yeah. There's something to be said about building the business case with the prospect or the customer, articulating that value statement, and then tracking, managing what kind of success you have against that. I don't think that's the point. I think the point of this insight is that it's overused in the market. Mm-hmm. Everyone is throwing out a statistic. And when everyone throws out a statistic, which one's the most important one? You know what I mean? Like, well, this guy's saying 65%. She's saying 35%. He's saying 27%. She's saying 150%. Right. Which number is the right number? You know what I mean? So it almost becomes like, what's important to me, right? What's important to my business? Let's establish some trust. Let's get to know each other a little bit. Let's make sure that there's a common interest here. And then at the right time, we can co-develop what the metrics look like for success. But if you just come out of the gate slinging numbers, it's like, holy shit, what are you talking about? You know what I mean?
And to your point, they've been so overused that people just don't believe them anymore. I mean, Think about how many companies, like when I drive up and down the 101 in San Francisco, it always cracks me up. How many companies do you know have 92% of the Fortune 500 companies as clients? It's like, just because they have one license of your stupid product doesn't mean you're selling into the Fortune 500. Or when somebody says, oh, we showed you increase your productivity by 65%. It's like, okay, you found like the best case scenario from your best customer who was in the worst scenario possible, and you cherry picked that number. And I just don't believe it. And another Gong post that really resonated with me was how they talk about how, you know, because we're talking about use cases and case studies and stuff like that. And the problem that that dawned on me was people will not believe the after effect until they believe the before. So for instance, if I don't believe that my scenario was the same scenario as the person that you're talking about before you fixed them, I'm never going to believe the outcome. Okay. And the example that they use on this is Alcoholics Anonymous, right? When you go to AA's website, you don't see somebody being like, hey, thanks AA, I'm 10 years sober and my life's so much better because I joined AA. You see somebody sitting there going, it started with one drink, and then I was drinking at work, and then I was missing my kid's soccer game. And then, right, and what happens there, the goal there is to have you go, shit, man, that's me. Yeah. Because once I get you on that's me, now you can tell me about the outcome. So to your point earlier, nurture with like asking a question, a very well-placed question about, hey, VK, how are you keeping your reps motivated and engaged now that everybody's working from home, right? And da-da-da-da. Well, did you know, later on, by the way, if that's you, here's some cool stuff that we've done for other companies like you. People overuse testimonials and case studies, and they name drop just to name drop. You better be name dropping of people that are very similar to me, or else I'm never going to buy into what you do. Like I could go around saying, oh, I train Salesforce and LinkedIn and Slack and Google and that all those sound fantastic. Yeah. But if you're a 20-person sales team, Series A round funding, you're going to look at that and go, yeah, dude, those companies fart money. So you must be wicked expensive. I'm good. Right.
Exactly right. I love it, John. I mean, you're spot on with that. And you bring up a really good point. I mean, a good foreshadow with respect to AA. I just read Pete DeFonzo's quote about 37% of all quotes.
60% of the time, it works every time. Right?
That's funny. Keep posting, Pete. You're making me crack up here. But one of the things that I love about dropping percentages and numbers is, leveraging customers to do that. Okay. Yeah. So when I was a sales rep, one of the best things I ever did was wrap my arms around everybody else's customers, not because I was poaching them, but because there were relevant stories that I could leverage with my prospects. So is it more impactful for you to throw a number out there or for me to do a reference call on the second or third? Think about this. People usually wait to do reference calls at the end of a sales cycle for validation. Yep. When the customer is in the risk phase of their buying process. Yep. Why not accelerate that process and bring a customer to the beginning and say, hey, we've had a couple of calls. I think I have a really good handle on your pain points. I understand what you're trying to accomplish. I think we have a solution. This is what I'm talking about, but let me introduce you to so-and-so that works for so-and-so company. I think you guys might compete, you might not, but nonetheless, they want to talk about the type of lift that they got working with us. Yep. Leveraging that relationship in the middle or even in the beginning of the sales cycle can help you get access to power. It can help you get a plan. It can help accelerate the close of what you're trying to do versus I'm going to hold this customer hostage until you tell me I'm the vendor of choice. Well, you might never get there because things have changed. The world has changed, and there needs to be a lot more validation up front with respect to credibility versus later on in the process because the competition is so stiff.
Yeah, and actually, let's go back to those points we made before. I mean, think about somewhere in the middle. Once I've qualified you, once I've kind of discovered and there is a fit here, and I think there's some next steps here, think about reaching out to another one of your clients that you have a good relationship with, like VK, for instance. Like if you and I, like if I was working on another company that had similar challenges to you that I uncovered, and asking you, hey, VK, could you do me a favor, man? Like, real solid here. I got this client that I'm trying to get. They fit the same profile that you had, the same problems. Could you just put together a 5-minute, like a 2-second video here? Just give it, hey, and giving a little testimonial for me, but directed at them. And having you light up, right? And be like, yeah, you know what? Hey, John asked me, I know you're working with John, and I just want to kind of throw it in there that we had a similar problem. If you have any questions, give me a call back. You know how far that would go?
Huge. It would be absolutely huge. And Sharon just asked a really interesting question. She said, it's a naive question, but why would a competitor help sell a service that's working for them? You'd be surprised.
Yep.
You'd be surprised how many people that even though they compete will validate a third-party vendor that is asking them to help them. That's where the empathy and the relationship come through in the buying process, because at the end of the day, we're all people. You might have some hard, some companies that have hard rules where you cannot do a reference for a competitor. Right. And you're going to get those. You're going to have a handful of those that won't do it. but you'll be surprised the overwhelming majority that actually will actually get on a phone and say, hey, I'm just validating that this email marketing capability is in line with what we're trying to do with one-to-many and one-to-one in a no spam environment. That's all we're trying to validate. Can you speak to XYZ company's ability to execute on this?
Exactly.
We're not talking about our secret sauces. We're just validating whether or not this person that's trying to sell me a bill of goods is actually worth their salt, and what they're saying is something that I'd be interested in for, further engagement. Mm-hmm. So don't discount the competitive landscape, because you'll be surprised how many will pick up the phone and have a conversation.
Absolutely. And Cynthia, it does happen. I will say, if you're an SDR and you don't have any relationships with clients because you're kind of in and out real quick, then go talk to customer success, go talk to some AEs. I guarantee you there's some AEs in your organization that have really solid relationships. And by the way, the more you get to know those case studies, the better off you're going to be able to sell. Because nobody likes pitches. Everybody loves stories. And if you understand the stories of your case studies and you get to know those customers, your messaging will be better, your talk tracks will be better, your objection handling will be better. So one of the biggest recommendations I give to reps coming on board is, okay, go learn about the product. Who cares? Go read the stories. Go talk to customers. Right. And let's get to tell them something about their business. You had said something earlier, VK, about teaching me something. How do I teach you something? If I'm an SDR, if I'm a 22-year-old kid or whatever it is, and I'm let's talk about selling security or IT services or something like that, and I'm reaching out to a technical person at a VP or above level, how the hell am I going to teach you something? What advice would you give to a kid who's trying to figure that one out?
Have the confidence to do it.
Yeah.
And I think it starts with confidence. Look, just because someone is a CEO or a VP or an SVP or whatever their fancy title is, that doesn't mean that they know everything. Okay. Mm-hmm. Their job is to listen. If they're worth their salt, they listen more than they speak. Okay. Mm-hmm. This is kind of a different situation because we're supposed to talk right now. But sure. If you're ever in a meeting with me, I'm really not talking. I'm listening. Why? Because I want to learn from everybody. Mm-hmm. I value different perspectives and different opinions, right? Leaders are leaders because they have a big job ahead of them. They have to make decisions and they have growth mandates and they have to do things with their companies. But the best source of education is the world around them. Mm-hmm. So if you are discouraged by thinking that, he or she might not be receptive to what you're saying, you're leaving a lot of opportunity on the table to open a door, because that leader that you're trying to sell to is looking for input and information to help run their business, mm-hmm. to collaborate better, to grow, to retain, to invest. All of those pieces of information go into one decision. Mm-hmm. There's thousands of data points that make one decision. So don't be discouraged with sharing something that you think he or she may or may not know already.
And this I'm going to bleed this into social selling here, because, social selling and brand building is an interesting topic. A lot of people do it just to get a following, whatever. I'm going to give everybody a tip here that's going to help you communicate better with executives, build your personal brand, and build your business acumen. Go and set up, so let's pick CISOs, okay? Say I'm a 22-year-old kid and I'm selling a technical solution to CISOs, Chief Information Security Officers. I'm going to go and I'm going to Google CISOs Priorities Challenges 2021. And I'm going to read a few articles about what these, who's writing about this. I'm also going to go follow all the thought leaders in that space. So say I'm selling to CISOs in healthcare. I'm going to Google CISOs Healthcare Thought Leaders 2021. There'll be a list out there of some company or people who are speaking about that space. I'm then going to follow all those people and I'm going to consume their content. And when I consume their content, I'm going to learn, and then I'm going to share with my context, with my thoughts on that piece. So I'm going to read an article from a CISO about certain things in healthcare and what's going on there. I'm going to then share that on social and say, hey, really interesting article here by so-and-so about what the challenges CISOs are facing. The top thing, my key takeaways were X, Y, and Z, right? Then I'm going to take that knowledge and I'm going to fire off some emails to some CISOs and I'm going to say, hey, VK, are you currently facing this challenge that I'm hearing a lot of other CISOs found in healthcare? The reason I ask is because our solution actually addresses that, and I thought it'd be worth a conversation. Now, by asking them a question that is very tailored to their persona, all of a sudden you might get me to think. And to your point, PK, that's our job right now. Our job is to get people to think. It's not to educate people on features, functions, speeds, and feeds, okay? Google took that away from us. If you can get me to think, now all of a sudden you got me. I'll pay attention.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, John. And look, right now more than ever, decision makers are thinking, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because there's too much to think about. There's so much to think about. So if you can help me with my thought process around all of these things that we have to like weigh pros and cons with, work from home, where do you make investments? Where do you not make investments? Do you buy this ahead of payroll? You're competing with payroll.
Yep.
You're competing with office space. You're competing with benefits. You're competing with all these things. So if you're getting me to think about you and your service or your product in parallel to all these other thoughts that I have, we have something to talk about. But if you're irrelevant, trust me, there's plenty to think about, already. So get the person to think.
Yep. Get them to think. Challenge them. All right, design thinking. This is one where when we go back to this slide here about bring something new, teach them something about their business, this whole thing about top down, bottom up, this is something I think people should pay more and more attention to. Now, this is for enterprise and mid-market. This isn't for the SMB, so I'm going to couch that with that. But the idea here is, in a growth economy, normal rules apply, all right? You can go to the executive, you could get pushed down, and executives tend to make decisions that could be somewhat unpopular in the sense that I don't need the consensus of my entire team because things are going well. I'm looking 5 years out. I'm making decisions that you might not like now, but it's going to help us get to where we need to go, right? Growth economy. Down economy, not so much. Executives don't like to make unpopular decisions in down economies, and they don't look 5 years out anymore. They look a year out. They look a quarter out, those type of things. So instead of going top down, think about going bottom up in the sense of becoming a customer, right? Design thinking is in the product space where, like Apple, for instance, when Apple comes out with a product, they don't come out with a product and say, we're smarter than you, go use it. They watch how we work and then they release something, which is why the iPad, when it first came out, was so intuitive, right? Because it was like, oh shit, look at this. So it's the same thing in sales. If you want to learn about a business, go learn about a business. And I mean that, go become a customer. Like if you're selling a Walmart, go to Walmart, walk the floor, sign up for their newsletter, buy something online, try out their customer support, learn about their business from the inside, talk to people on the front lines of their organization to talk about what their challenges are and build a real business case about what the true need is or gaps are, and then bring it to the executive, because the executive is usually 15 steps removed from the ground floor. You bring them ground floor insights, they might pay attention to you. How are you seeing this? Like, what are your thoughts around that approach, VK?
Look, it's the best way to get into an enterprise account because there's so much complexity in an enterprise sale, right? The best way to get in is to have that level of personalization, and that, I like to say you're really getting a good understanding of how they cater to their customers. Mm-hmm. So that, my team is having their sales kickoff right now as we speak. And one of the things that I, tell Eddie Hansen, our rock star VP of sales, who joined me from Salesforce, is, we've got a really huge medical device company that we're engaged with right now. And I was just talking to him. I said, I want the team, when we're engaged in an enterprise deal, just imagine sitting down with that CEO of that huge medical device company. And in a 30-minute conversation over a bourbon, you can tell that CEO, or whatever you drink, could be a soda water, in that 30-minute conversation, you have articulated almost everything about their business, their products, their challenges, their growth strategies, what's worked for them, what hasn't worked for them. Why? Because you experienced it firsthand. Mm-hmm. And it resonated with me because my father had a pacemaker put in. And this pacemaker that was put into my dad was from the same exact company that we're trying to sell into. So that experience that I have with that medical device company is so personal and so relevant for me, where I can almost talk about this line of product that they have from soup to nuts and all the pros and all the cons and areas that we can impact them in a 25-minute conversation over a bourbon, right? And that happened with that device rep that was in the hospital, putting it in, that first interaction during the procedure, after the procedure, and all the follow-up that I've had. Yeah. But it can also work, John. It can also work with interviewing employees of the company. So obviously you're trying to get to a decision maker and you're trying to get up to, someone with power to talk to you about a deal. But that fact-finding mission can happen with a sales rep, a technical person. It can happen with someone that doesn't even have decision-making authority, where you take all of that information across multiple conversations and then present that in a way that really hits a chord and resonates with that person that has that buying, making decision and authority in an enterprise sale. So you don't just have to be a customer. You can leverage their employee base to also help you with that fact-finding mission.
Absolutely. And that's what somebody else does at scale. It really doesn't, but you can do small things. I'll give you an example. When I prospect into an account, one of the things I do is I go submit an inbound lead. And I make myself look legit, like their exact ICP, right? And I just wait to see how I get. What kind of response do I get? Do I get a templated piece of crap email that says whatever? Is it personalized in any way? How fast do they respond to me? And just that alone, I can then reach out to the VP of sales and be like, hey, I just want to throw it out there, man. I put in an inbound lead for you. It took 5 hours for the rep to get back to me, and it was this templated piece of crap email, and I've lost interest because I already looked at 3 other options for this. I'd love to talk to you about how we can actually make that more efficient. Something as simple as that is a little small thing about design thinking.
Shit, Mike, John, I even do that with our company. When we roll out something, I want to see how fast leads get followed up on. Is the chat being followed up on? Is the phone system working? Am I popping up on the website hits? All those little things of spot checking. I promise you, if you do that in a way, you can uncover so much that will be valuable in conversation with some of these decision makers when you actually get them on the line.
Exactly. I mean, I think there's the question is scale. I got 100 to 200 accounts. Yeah, don't pick 10. Pick 10 accounts a week or something like that, or 10 accounts a month that you're going to go deep on and see what the conversion ratio, see what your success ratio is compared to somebody else, right? Yeah, BK is a secret shopper. All right, a couple more here. Because I do want to get a couple of questions too that James has. The ABE approach, account-based everything. I think this is the point I want to make on this one is sales needs to take a bigger piece out of the equation for marketing. I think we need to take a page from marketing. This is about an impression game. This is why social selling and brand building is so important, because it's not about the one phone call. It's not about the one email. It's about the overall story that we tell these people and the impressions, the positive impressions that we make. Look, the likelihood of you cold-calling somebody and having them say, yes, I need that right now. So that would be an inbound lead. If somebody already is in the need, in the mode of I need this product, you're probably the 5th vendor now on the list that they're already looking at. But when you make positive impressions, the whole idea here is if I retweet something, I share something, I send you an email, I leave you a voicemail, and if every one of those pieces are valuable and aligned with, and not always asking, hey, I want to talk. Eventually what happens is it builds this positive social, subconscious or conscious profile of you. So when that need pops up to the top of their list, you're the one they call. I can't tell you how many times Morgan, we'll get an inbound lead and I kind of take a look at a lot of the inbound leads and I'll be like, oh, cool, good account. And then I'll look in Salesforce and I'll see, holy smokes, Morgan has called them, emailed them, LinkedIn voicemail, whatever it is. But somebody else from their organization then does an inbound lead for us. You can't tell me that all that stuff that Morgan was doing didn't drive that conversation coming into us.
Love it.
So, and for those would be ABS is account-based selling, ABE is account-based everything, and ABM is account-based marketing. It needs to be account-based everything. That's the alignment between sales and marketing is broken, and it always will be. But the ones who do it well are the ones who will absolutely crush it coming out of here.
Yeah, and John, we can't say it enough in this environment. It's not like you can just walk down the hall and talk to marketing anymore, right? You can't go to lunch and, hey, let's talk a little bit about these accounts or this approach. Right. You got to be even more collaborative right now than ever. So I implore you, if you're not having one-on-ones, if you're not feeding up information to your VPs or your sales leaders, they're not having conversations with marketing. This gap is going to become bigger and bigger during this time frame that we're all remote. And, some of us might stay remote for the long term, and some of us might get back to the offices soon, but this gap between sales and marketing and your ABM, ABS, strategies is a serious thing that needs attention, and everyone needs to be involved in it because there's too much at stake if you don't, right? Yeah. You got to talk to each other.
Yeah, I mean, we could talk about ABM all day long. I want to make sure that we hit on some questions here. So, James, what are some good questions that came out here?
So I have two right off the bat that I think are interesting. What kinds of deals do you bring references in early on? And do you ever get worried about consistently asking for references would that be annoying to an older client that you utilize for a reference?
What was the first part? I got that second part.
First part is what kinds of deals do you bring references in early on?
BK, what are your thoughts on that one?
I love that question. Typically, when you bring, what I used to do with, and what I encourage our team members to do is, if it's a complicated deal, if it's very competitive, if you're trying to differentiate and you're trying to get access to power with a lot of different complexities, tee that up front, okay? And what you're going to find is it's going to disarm your prospect. It's going to disarm the selling process. And it's going to help you establish some trust to say, hey, I'm not holding these things back from you. I am giving you access to the most precious thing in my company, which is my customer. And I am allowing you to speak to this precious, beautiful thing that we love and we cherish, which is our customer. And I want you to talk to them, and I want you to have an open dialogue with them so that all the things that you're asking us to solve for, you can validate with them before we go any further to make sure that this is the right approach for you. And guess what? It changes the game completely because your competitors probably aren't doing that.
No.
I don't know about y'all, but if somebody called one of our customers beautiful and precious, I would be like, yo, this is a win all day. Like, I definitely want to talk to you. All right, another good question from
James. Real quick, James, let me chime on that. I think the thing is, the more that you know your customers and the more you know those stories, the more you're going to know when to bring the right ones in at the right time. So you don't want to just yes, it's the profile of the client and the complexity, and I agree, all of those things, but you got to know when it's the right time to do that. And you only know that by understanding exactly what those stories are. So at the point in time, you can be like, holy shit, when you listen to the client, be like, oh, that just came up. You know what? You got to talk to one of my other clients right now, right? Because they had that exact same problem. And then the other part of that question, which was, do you have clients that you abuse because they're like your oldest customer and whatever? Yeah, but it depends on the stage of your business. Because if you're a startup, what I would do is, if you're giving away, like if you got to give away discounts or something like that, be very open with your early customers and saying, look, we're trying to get our legs under us. I'm going to probably, would you mind, and we'll compensate you in some way, shape, or form, whatever it is. I'm probably going to abuse this. I promise I only do it with the clients that we have a real opportunity with, but it's probably going to be at least a few a month. Is that okay with you? And if they say yes, then they say yes. Just make sure that you're not giving them, I think the biggest thing that'll piss those customers off is if you give them any random ass person that's just looking for a reference. That's when you'll start to lose credibility on that.
I totally agree. One last comment. I know there's another question, but the way you can bridge that gap, if you don't have a lot of customers and you kind of feel like you're, quote unquote, exploiting customers when it comes to references, work with your team, work with your marketing team, get a few video testimonials as a bridge before you bring them in for a further conversation. You'd be surprised, even like a 3-minute interview that's recorded with a customer, how far it can go to bridge an actual face-to-face further down the sales process.
Absolutely. James, what's up? What else?
So this is probably my favorite. We can do a webinar just on this one.
Uh-oh.
So here it is. How do you ask questions without sounding like an infomercial? And here's a good example. Finding it challenging to turn website visits into actual conversions.
So how do you ask questions?
That's way too complicated for me.
Yeah, read it. Say it again because I want to go. Yeah, I think you're right. It is complex, but read it one more time, James.
How do you ask questions without sounding like an infomercial? And then this example that's given is are we finding it challenging to turn website visits into conversions? So this goes back to your point about pointing questions to uncover whether a prospect shares the same pain points as your existing customers.
All right, so I'll make a point on this one. This is a very deep topic to get into, but there's a difference between qualification and discovery, okay? Qualification is about us. I'm trying to qualify you to see if you fit into my world. And that should be done on a web form. That should be basically as fast as you can get that out of the way. And James, maybe you'll put this one in there. Find meeting efficiency survey. So Jay Barrows meeting efficiency survey, throw that one in there. That might help with this.
Got it.
The goal there is to compartmentalize that, like get that shit out of the way so that you can get into discovery. And discovery is tailored questions based on their situation, either based on the research that you did beforehand or the information you find out during, okay? And what I also recommend is have at least 3 or 4 questions prepared that are specific to that client that you then layer with. So the goal is you understand what and this is a Gong blog too, the best sales reps talk about 3 to 4 problem-oriented topics during the conversation, and then they ask 11 to 14 questions within those topics. But they don't come up with 14 questions. They come up with 3 to 4 total questions, like 1 or 2 under each topic, and then layer. So I'm going to ask kind of hey, VK, motivation and engagement, that type of, tell me more about that. How are your reps doing this? Give me an example of those type of things. The layering question until you find out the real answer to that is the way to make it so it doesn't come across as an interrogation. One more piece I will recommend is if you can, especially when dealing with an executive, you have 4 or 5 questions you can ask an executive before an executive just basically says, just tell me what you got. That's why you can't qualify an executive. You have to qualify before you get to the executive so you can discover. And when you ask an executive questions, tell them exactly how many questions you have. Hey, VK, I got 5 questions for you. After that, I'll tell you exactly how I think we can help. Because if I don't know how many questions you're going to ask, after the 3rd or 4th one, I'm going to get antsy here. And I'm going to say, would you just show me the demo? Just tell me what you got. Because what I'm asking there is, when am I going to get my value? You've gotten enough value out of me. I've answered all your stupid questions. When am I going to get mine? But if you tell me, John, I got 5 questions, I'll wait 5 questions. So hopefully that helps with that one.
John, I mean, that's why you're the best in the biz. I mean, that's exactly right. And quite frankly, go back to what we said on one of the previous slides. Talk like a human. And I'm looking at the question that you asked. That the question that you asked, that the conversions, your website traffic into conversions, that's a very well thought out question. But could you simplify the way you ask that question even more? Mm-hmm. Right? The straight talk around that question, I think, can go miles. But very, very solid question that could probably be its own webinar.
That's what I'm saying.
So, hey, real quick, we're going to finish up here. Look, couple of things. Hopefully you got some value out of this. We do have a lot of stuff. VK, you can find us both on LinkedIn. So if you have any questions on that stuff, don't hesitate to reach out to each one of us. We got our own on-demand platform that's going to have this hosted there. So that's where you'll get access to this. And again, thank you so much to the sponsors here. VK, any last things that you want to let the audience know a little bit before we get out of here?
Hey, I just wish everyone health and happiness and some prosperity for the new year. Stay positive. We got a whole awesome year ahead of us, and get off to a fast start. Thanks, Sean, for having us. James, thank you. We love you guys.
Absolutely. And everybody, I say this at the end of all my podcasts here, and I'm going to say it again because I think the world needs it. Go out there and make somebody smile today. Because even if you had a shitty day, if you haven't make somebody smile, you had a good day. I promise you that. And the world needs a lot more of that right now. All right, everybody. So get out there, keep grinding, stay positive, stay safe, and try to stay sane because this shit's bananas.
Go to the pool, John. Take care, guys.
Yeah, I got another training I got to hit on right now. I'm jumping in that pool after this, though. All right.
Thanks very much, guys. See you.
See you, everybody. Later.